Hello guys, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with Photoshop. So last time we learned about, or last few videos, what we learned about was about Illustrator. Um, as I explained before, Illustrator has some, they're used primarily as like I primarily use them as logo development or graphics that are going to be kind of like scalable. All right, Photoshop's a little bit different because what we're going to deal with Photoshop is the number of pixels that are per inch in the software. So you're going to see a little bit of what's going on, and this actually video is going to serve two purposes. It's going to give you an introduction to Photoshop, but it's also going to demonstrate the next project. All right, so we're going to start with here, and you probably have seen is that these two files. These two files are going to be what you're going to be using when you get to working on the project. And I'm going to demonstrate some items that you want to use. Illustrator was able to allow you to choose a black arrow and a white arrow and allow you to actually click and make things kind of like move around the screen easily. Photoshop, on the other hand, is a little different when it comes to that. There is no clicking and moving in this one. Instead, what you're going to be dealing with is going to be what we call layers. All right, layers are Adobe's way of creating, allowing you to kind of like move objects in this type of environment. All right. So what we're going to learn about is first, when we have to work with something in Photoshop, we have to select it. And as you can see over here, you can kind of see that there is a number of tools over here on the left. You got a control panel up at the top. You also have palettes over on to the right. So what we're going to deal with is we're going to deal with a number of different tools and kind of showing you what each of them do. So we're going to start with ways of selecting things. So it's like if you go over to the toolbox on the left, you're going to see that there are two columns. If you don't see that, you may see something similar to this. This is a one column layout. But I'm going to go with a two column layout for this particular demonstration. And you're going to see that there is a box that has dotted lines here. All right, those dotted lines refer to as kind of what we say is like the marching ants. All right, or it's what we call the rectangular marquee tool. So I'm going to click on that. And if I move my cursor over here on the side, you're going to see that if I go ahead and click, hold, drag, and then I let go, you got the infamous marching ants. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is selecting something. Any type of shape that you create, whatever's on the inside is what you are currently working with. Whatever's on the outside, you are not working with. It is just void. You cannot use it or do anything with it, as long as something's selected. So like right here, it's like you got a selection of a rectangle. Now I can, basically if I hold down the shift key, I can select things in a perfect square as well. All right, so there are different options there. If you click outside of it, you deselect it. Now if we go here, we got the elliptical marquee tool. And I'm going to go ahead and click, hold, drag. And you can create an ellipse. Or if I hold down shift, I can create a perfect circle. When I let go, it creates a perfect circle there. So I'm going to deselect that. Now there's other ways of doing it. You also have these tools, the lasso tool or the polygonal lasso tool. All right, the lasso tool will allow you to kind of like freeform select items. So if I go ahead and click, hold, drag, you can see that I'm basically create any kind of shape that I want and click on there, and then you got that. This selection is very organic. It's kind of like a free drawing type of element thing. So if I click and deselect that, that's gone away. You also have the polygonal lasso, which allows you to select straight edges. So if I go ahead and I click, and then I click kind of like the pen tool in a way, click, and then I go back to the beginning, I can click, and that will select my selection in straight lines. It's really great if you're using like a trying to select a building in perspective, because you can't use a rectangular marquee because that's too boxy. All right, usually buildings have straight edges, and we're talking about a 3-point perspective. So, all right, kind of going back to the rectangular marquee, if I go ahead and click and drag and create a selection, I can add to it, I can also subtract. If I move my cursor inside the box and I hold down Shift and I click, hold, drag, I can create more of the selection. I can even go outside the box, click, hold, drag, and I'll add another portion of selection, but it's not there. I can also hold down the Alt key, and this also works with a Mac. I go inside there, I can deselect part of my selection. So like so. So you can deselect portions of your selection. That works with any one of them, aside from the polygonal lasso, which I just showed you. Okay. All right, so that's that. That's how you select things as well. All right, there are a couple other tools on mine. We got, like if I go down these 3 dotted, at least on mine, yours may be a little bit different, but there are a couple here that I do want to show you that sometimes will show up in those particular locations depending on what version of the software you have. So like here, we're going to go to the magnetic lasso. If I choose that, the magnetic lasso kind of acts as kind of like a freeform lasso, but it will kind of like automatically get drawn to an edge. So if I go here, this edge kind of like looks pretty straight, but it's straight, but then also gets to be organic. This is a great thing for the magnetic because there is a high contrast edge going on here. So if I go ahead and click, and I basically try to stay as close to the edge as I possibly can. I want to go way out, and then just try to follow the edge of this corner. Till you get to the very beginning, and then you let go. All right, so I've got that particular edge there. All right, now what I like to do is I'm going to be working with this. That's why it's like right now I'm going to select that edge because that is one of the things that I want to work with. You'll see in a minute what I'm talking about. Now I am going to zoom in. So what I use is Control plus, Control minus to zoom in, zoom out. On a Mac it is Command plus, Command minus. So I'm going to go Control plus, and that allows me to kind of like zoom in. If I zoom in too far, you'll see that here are those boxes I talked about. Each of those boxes are referred to as kind of a pixel. Each pixel has one color in it, and the combination of all these boxes make the image. So I'm going to zoom out, so I don't need to be that far in. And I'm going to kind of like use my space bar. My space bar, if I hold down my space bar, you'll see that it creates this hand cursor. I use the hand, and I actually use my mouse. Holding down the space bar, I can click, hold, drag, and it allows me to kind of like pan around the image when I'm zoomed in. You can also use the scroll bars on the right and the scroll bar on the bottom for that as well. Now I got some areas here that I do want to include within my selection. So I'm going to go to my lasso tool, and I want to select this portion in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to start inside the selection. I don't want to start right on it because I don't have to. All right, I like to be a little bit more loose in that, so I don't have to be exact with that selection because it doesn't matter. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to click, hold, drag, and retrace that edge some. Then I go back right where I began. Go here, I see an edge here that I want to use. Now notice how far I'm going in there, but I'm always going back to where I began because you want to go around it before you let go. And I'm going to go other places here along the edge. Now here's a spot that I don't want. This is where I use the Alt, and I go on the opposite side of the selection. Click, hold, drag, and again I'm holding down the Alt key, creating a circle to deselect that. Alright, gonna zoom out. Alright, now that I made that selection, I want to be able to work with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to Edit, Copy, and you'll notice that I have two tabs open. One is Photo Pieces 2, one is Photo Pieces 1. Photo Pieces 2 is what I'm working in currently. If I click on this tab, you'll see that I get to go to another picture. And here is actually where those two pieces go. So if I go to Edit, Paste now, it'll paste it inside that image. But what we also notice here, if you look all the way to your right, you should have the Layers palette open. The Layers palette will show you that this is a light gray that's called Layer 1. Layer 1 is what I am currently working in. And below it is what is called background. Background is what the image is. So you'll see that Layer 1 background are two separate layers. Think of this as kind of like a like, I don't know, say an onion, but basically what we used to use in graphic design was called acetone. Acetone or acetate. Sorry, acetate was like this clear sheet of paper that you used to kind of like put on an overhead projector because it was like you could shine stuff, print on it, and then you could shine stuff through an overhead and see it on a screen. Think of it like that, where the background is actually the glass that these things sit on is kind of like or the desktop that you're working on. And Layer 1 is kind of like that piece of paper on the desktop, right? But it's clear. And you can move around that piece of paper wherever you want. You can rotate it. You can do all that stuff to it. But you can't move the desktop, okay? So here, since I have Layer 1 selected, and you can tell that by this gray, this light gray that's on here, I'm going to go up to Edit, Transform, Rotate. Do not scale in this particular exercise. Do not ever scale because it's going to throw you off. So I'm going to rotate, and you'll see that my object now has these handles, which you should be familiar with those from Illustrator. Now I'm going to move out here, click, hold, drag, and I'm going to rotate that. Now if I put my cursor inside the object, I can click, hold, drag, make it come down a little bit. Go outside and I can rotate. I can also use my arrow keys on my desktop or on my keyboard. If I use my arrow keys, it's called nudging. Nudging it to get there. Now, I would encourage you to zoom in by using Control plus or Command plus on a Mac. And then use your arrow keys to kind of like nudge it into place. You want to look for certain areas that you need to line up. So this is a part where you have to be picky. All right. So I'm looking at the line here. I'm looking at the horizontal line in this. Right, go up a little bit. Looking at the line there, here. All right, looking at different lines and how they line up, and if they're lining up pretty good. Also looking at the sidewalk edge. So now I got that in place, I can go ahead and hit the Enter key, and that will make it transform. All right, you may want to look at it again and kind of like use to nudge a little bit if you can. You can go up to what is called the Move tool. The Move tool is up in the top left corner of your toolbox. The move tool will only move things on a layer. So what you can do is you can nudge this into place. That looks pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to go back to my Photo Pieces 2 tab, and I want to select this thing. So I'm going to use my magnetic. So if I click and hold it and see the magnetic lasso tool. And then now I'm going to go around and trace that. You don't have to be perfect on the first time. So we're going to make that. I'm going to zoom in again because I want to add to my selections here because this one was way off in some locations. So I'm going to go to my lasso tool. I'm going to hold down the shift key and add this little piece in. This one I want to take out, so I'm going to hold down the alt key. Same thing here, hold down shift, add to my selection. Here, add to my selection. Always going inside to select more items. Okay, so I'll go all the way up. Select all of this. And select all of this as well. I'm not going to be too concerned about all this here because I don't really care. So I'm going to go up to edit and I'm going to go ahead and copy. Go back to my Photo Pieces 1 and I'm going to go edit, paste. Now you notice that it added another layer, layer 2. Every time you copy and paste something into Photoshop, it's always going to be a new layer. I'm going to go to my move tool, kind of move it up here a little bit. Then I'm going to go edit, transform, rotate. So I'm going to kind of like move this into place, rotate that. Use my arrow keys to kind of like nudge it. And you want to make sure you have as much in here as you can. The hardest part of this particular exercise is the sign, I can tell you that right now. I have a lot of students who have had issues with that when they were working on stuff. Rotate that. Again, you want to be picky. You want to make sure that you get it exactly right because the next step will be a little bit difficult if you don't. Alright, I think that's probably as close as I'm going to get it. So I'm going to hit enter or return on Mac. So it applies that. Alright. Now the next step is where if you were picky on this and you got it exactly the where you want it to be, I want you to go ahead and do this next step. But this next step, you're not going to be able to go back. What it's going to do is take all three of these layers and it's going to flatten them to one. And that's what we want, or what I want. It's going to make the next step easiest for you. So I'm going to go up to here where the layers palette is, and you'll see that there are 4 little lines up in the upper left hand corner or upper right hand corner. Click that and you should see an option called flatten image at the very bottom of the list. Click that and you'll see that all your layers go away except for the background, because right now it is all flattened. Okay. So that's how you work with something in Photoshop. The next step is how do you go ahead and retouch things? All right, in Photoshop is what it's made for is to retouch photos. All right, fix them, things like that, make them look a little better. All right, so in some cases like this, you see all these little scratches on the photo. All the scratches need to go away. All right, so how do we do that? Well, we use a little tool that we have used in, well, it's been around since Photoshop was first made. It's called the clone stamp tool. So over here on the left side, it looks like a little rubber stamp option. So if you've worked with little rubber stamps, you notice like basically you have a pad of ink, you have the stamp. And what you'd have to do in order to get it on paper is you have to put the stamp in the ink. Pick up the ink, place it on the paper. Same exact process. Except here what you're doing is you're picking up a texture, or picking up everything, and you're painting it where you want it. So like here, what we're going to deal with is you got the stamp tool, you got this circle. All right, that's what's called a brush. All right, you can change the brush size by using your bracket keys on your keyboard. They're usually above the enter key. So if I hit the right bracket, it makes it bigger. If I move to the left one, it makes it smaller. You want to use a brush that is relatively a little bit bigger than the actual thing you're fixing. Otherwise, you're just going to put too much in and you just don't need that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this out of the roof here. How I do that, how I pick up a texture, is I have to hold on the Alt key for a minute. If I use Alt key, you'll see my cursor turns into a little target area. I'm going to go over here to the side, and I'm going to click, let go of the mouse, then let go of the Alt key. What that initially did was that is the first step, taking the stamp, putting it in the ink. Now I want to put it on the paper. So I'm going to move my brush over here. I'm not holding down any buttons on my mouse. And you can see here, you can see a little preview of what it's going to put down, which is nice because if you have lines like that, you can kind of like see them. So to paste it, all you have to do is click, hold, drag, as you can see here. Now in certain areas, you'll get to certain points where it won't work. So like if I did this, if I kept going, you see how it doesn't work. So I'm going to undo that by going Edit, Undo Clone Stamp. I'm going to come up here and only paste in what you can. In other, certain instances, like this roof line, I want to pick up an edge here. So I'm going to actually resample, hold on the Alt key, click, move your cursor into place, click, hold, drag, and then you can paste that in. The same thing applies for any number of these. So you can kind of like paste them in here. Same thing with siding. I'm resampling, realigning, and then painting. Sample, paint, sample, paint, sample the line. I like going the lines first because that way it allows me to line things up quickly. So just like so. All right. So that's what you're going to end up doing. To turn this in, you just go up to File, Save As, and choose JPEG as an option. Save as type, JPEG. Do not send me a Photoshop file. That will be too big. All right, so send a JPEG of that. All right. So that's it for Photoshop for today. Basically, for the rest of this exercise, what I basically want you to do is I want you to kind of like fix this photo. All the little scratches, all the little things that need to be taken out, do that. Make it look like it was actually a clean photo and how it was taken. All right. See ya.